use the time clock to your advantage. Have marketing working for you 24/7 by having staff forward located around the world so that you can be executing overnight, keeping projects moving from the day to overnight, and then picking them up and starting them again in US hours.
This is the Revenue-Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue-Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI-driven performance agency that makes you smarter.
Hey, what is up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Revenue-Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic, here with a super exciting guest. Our guest today has got over 25 years of experience in high tech and SaaS marketing. She has produced countless wins, countless transformations. She's seasoned and versatile in terms of just driving tangible business, but also she's got a mind for brand. She can think at that level. She's incredibly agile and just like a great all-around leader. You should see her resume. It's like, oh my goodness, like she started off at Intel. Well, first she was in the Army for 12 years, then went to Intel, then Motorola, then Microsoft, basically just making her way around the Fortune 500. Expedia group she spent some time at, but then it seems, in the past several years, she's gotten more into like the, smaller / mid-market B2B SaaS. So I'm really, really excited to hear about things that she's learned, in the Fortune 10s and how she's bringing that over. So let's jump right in. Let's welcome today's guest, Miss Wendy White, who is currently Chief Marketing Officer at Daxko. Welcome,
I think
Wendy.
from that description, she sounds pretty badass. I want to know her.
She is badass. I'm glad to know her, and I'm glad to have her here today. We like to lead with the values, so let's jump right in. Tell us, what has been one of your biggest secrets of success in marketing?
Yeah, I'm going to give one that maybe is a bit of a surprise, but for me, it's about building a high performance round the clock team. So thinking about how you can use follow the sun as a model to drive agility, volume, output, and results in a marketing team.
Follow the sun, you said?
Yep, follow the sun.
What do you mean by that?
Just, use the time clock to your advantage. Have marketing working for you 24/7 by having staff forward located around the world so that you can be executing overnight, keeping projects moving from the day to overnight, and then picking them up and starting them again in US hours.
Brilliant. So you're literally staffing across the time zones.
I'm literally staffing across the time zones.
Wow.
My current team, for example, is, all 3 time zones in the US. In the afternoon, our Manila team comes on. And then, overnight, our team in India comes on. So we are, especially for us in projects that can be executed based on direction in like Asana or, in a ticketing based way where we can, hand off a project. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, we decided to do a video. We did a bunch of quick recordings in the US, tossed it to our team in India overnight, came back in this morning, and, it was 90% done. And our team here said, let's make this tweak and that tweak. And we were done. And we produced a great video for a conference we're doing next week overnight. Right. And so that agility and that speed of execution really creates a high performing team, but it also really empowers your senior marketers who are in the US time zone to focus on the top high value things that only they can do versus getting bogged down in tactical execution.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So, I've heard of outsourcing. I've never heard of this round the clock, but it must enable you to produce just like a massive amount of output. How do you go about doing it? Like, you
can think of it as outsourcing, but like, I don't think of it as outsourcing. Like, what I would say is our team members, be they full-time employees or contracted employees, in Manila, we work through a third party called Flat Planet. There's other, services like that, like globalization partners you can use to, forward locate employees in a geography where you might not have a tax entity or might not be able to hire. So for us, we don't have a tax entity in Manila, but we do have our own entity in India. So we hire through Flat Planet in Manila, and we have our own staff in India. And again, it's all about the process of like, how do you write a really good brief? How do you be super clear on the scope? How do you lead good handoff instructions? How do you have a good tool like Asana so you can see the status of projects, know who's been assigned to them, move them through so you have super clear communication?
Yeah.
Those are the foundations of it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Where did you learn this, or like how long has this been core to your
I
playbook?
think, I've always, one thing about having companies like Intel and, Motorola is they tend to be pretty global.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft, for example, I used to run advertising operations at Microsoft where we had to produce the advertising for English speaking markets, but then, transcreate it and give it to the, subsidiaries around the world to use it in their markets. And we created a model where we like forward stage like a marketing services center, around the world. So we could hand that to that team. They could go execute it. They could go coordinate in their time zone with the advertising managers in each of the countries. So, using models like that. But, as a CMO at a startup or a mid-sized company, like I've been a CMO at companies, all the way from a Series A to B to, a sub-billion dollar big division of a company. You have to think about what resources you have and think about, the smart way of doing that. And I've always run into the situation where there's never enough budget, to like my eyes are always bigger than my stomach of what I want to accomplish versus the headcount I have. And so doing this is a great way of leveraging both people budget and program budget and not using very expensive agencies.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love how you're taking things you learned from space A, which is like,
Yeah.
The massive, mega caps, and bringing them down here. It's brilliant. And I think everybody should think about this and do this. We historically, as an agency, have not outsourced very much. We've tried to, but had mixed results. And I apologize for calling it outsourcing, because I know that's not what you're doing. And I think that might be like a big key to the success that you're seeing. We continue to pursue, even though it hasn't been, that fruitful for us in the past, we continue to pursue, especially since the pandemic, because the world has just become like your talent pool.
The world is flat. Like that's just the thing. The world is flat now, right? If you think about it that way, and you think about time as a resource, then this becomes a super, smart way to work. And I think to your point about it's not outsourcing, if you are hiring fantastic talent, the talent pool in Manila and the talent pool in India is very deep and very strong, right? And, I just hired, for example, we decided that we really wanted to hire a very senior BI person to do like business intelligence, data analytics reporting, thinking through not only like our marketing attribution and our marketing data, but what is the original storytelling we could take to the market if we plumbed our own data for insights, right? Like SEO is changing so much. You need to have your own data and insights to create unique content that's not AI generated.
Yeah.
So we decided we'd have that role. I evaluated where could I get that talent? What would it cost me? And we found an amazing, very senior person in India for that role. And they are building that team, leading that function for us, right? In a way I probably could never have afforded in the US, and I might not have found the same talent.
Hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours, even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization. If you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenue-drivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenue-drivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.
Yeah. So I think the cost on that BI person here would be like 6 figures easily, probably $150 to $200, I would imagine. Higher.
Yes, right around that. Yes, exactly.
What's the price point in India, if you don't mind?
A quarter of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So you know, and again, they're well compensated employees for that market, and they're highly valuable team members.
Yeah. So what do you call it? If you don't use the term outsourcing, do you call it offshoring, or how do you refer to it? It's just like the team in India or the team in Manila?
It's just the team.
Just the team.
It's just the team.
That's such an empowering way to look at it. So for folks that are loving this idea and thinking, oh my God, I got to go do this right now. Like, what are the steps involved, or how might somebody start moving into this direction?
I think you better think about your org chart, and first of all, make sure your org chart is clean. Like, when I come in as a new CMO, one of the things I will discover is orgs have evolved to be a little bit of fruit salad. Meaning that, one of the leaders was so good at saying that they started collecting jobs in their function. And so that leader has, some apples and bananas over here, and there's also some apples and bananas someplace else. When you start having to move work across time zones, when you don't have a lot of time zone overlap, you got to have the work clean. You got to have the job scope super clearly. You got to have the handoffs. You got to have really good discipline about documentation and creative briefs and that aspect of it. So the number one thing is clean up your org in the US, make sure your processes are good, make sure you have a good backbone of a good tool like Asana or Monday or whatever it might be, and make sure your team is really good at writing briefs and managing process and handoffs. Start there. And then you can afford to start bringing in, other time zones. You got to know how to manage it first.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Any secrets in terms of briefs? I know or is it like in terms of briefs, is it just good old fashioned, brief 101 training, repetition, just like do it well, or do you have any secrets there?
Plus it's like super clear, really clear templates and tools. Like, if your website is made up of 4 levels and maybe, 6 or 8 different types of pages, you better have those pages named. You better have those, the description of those pages down, like it's Hero 1 or Hero 5 or, copy block, Bob, Lucy, or Susan, I don't care, name them. So everybody knows when you're handing off work, what kind of page you're talking about, what on the page is being changed. Like, those things have to be super, super clear. The structure and the process of stuff needs to be super clear.
Wow. That's a fire, like little micro tip right there. Like taxonomy, naming, nomenclature, because a lot of times in the brief, you'll find yourself being like, oh, directly over the headline, like in that little box to the right. Like, think about how many words that is versus like, the opt-in box or opt-in box A or whatever.
Name it. Yeah, name it. This one I learned. I had a fantastic digital marketing leader when I was at Expedia, and we had a terrible website when I started. Terrible. For Agencia, which was the B2B arm. It's not part of Expedia anymore. It was a very standalone, business. We had a terrible website, and it was because the product team developed the website, and marketing really wasn't involved. So it really did not function for marketing. Like, there was almost no conversion points on that website. It was like the brochureware of brochureware websites you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And part of taking that back over was defining what did we want this site to do? What was the functionality of every single page? Was it a product page? Was it a helper page? Was it a, a pricing page? Was it a resource page? And getting all that clear, and then naming the templates and naming everything, so everybody knew exactly what we were talking about at all times.
Yeah.
And that works. It does work, and it is helpful.
That works tremendously well. And I could see it also going into other assets too. Like if you have email templates, if you've got, even ad templates, like you could have
Any of
different
that.
components of every ad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even ad templates, like, ads tend to work on some really basic psychological principles, right? Like either you're, trying to communicate, risk, or you're trying to communicate FOMO. Like there's a bunch of like heuristics you use when you create advertising. You can create templates for those different models of ads and say, oh, for this ad, we're going to run, this template, and it's going to, here's the proof point. It's pretty easy then for a team to pick it up and come back and ideate on a few ideas of that, and give it to you the next day. Again, speed is incredible here.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, cool. So let's step through this, and then I want to talk about Daxko a little bit. So you've eliminated the fruit salad. You've got your internal org chart really defined and clarified. You've delivered trainings, and you've developed taxonomy and nomenclature in terms of how to write a good brief, as well as project management. It sounds like you run from the headquarters. So you've delivered that training to your US team. Everybody's all set to go. Now what do you do?
Well, in this instance, we reached out to Flat Planet because I've used them a couple times, and worked with them to spin up a team. They're really easy to work with. So we started with Manila, and had Manila going because there's a little bit more time zone overlap between Manila and the US. So we use that as our test bed for how do we hand work off overnight. And then we scaled to our team in India. We've been hiring in India for marketing, I don't know, 4 or 5 months now. So we've gone from 0 headcount to 15 staff in marketing in just a few months. And those staff tend to be in our digital marketing, our marketing operations, our reporting and analytics, our creative team, our web dev team. Like it's all over the place. Definitely, I think starting with an easier time zone overlap is helpful, because you got to teach your managers how to manage people in different time zones. You got to work through that handoff. You got to know how to do that and build that trust before, you're working on complete opposite times. Like, in India, it's 12-hour difference. You're not really overlapping at all.
Yeah. So you would suggest maybe not starting in Manila or India, maybe in like Latin America, something like that?
Latin America is great. My last company, we partnered with globalization partners and put resources in Mexico. And we had such good luck with Mexico for MOPS and design and work. So, again, if you can tap into one of these partners that will help you put resources in, in a country, Mexico and Buenos Aires are 2 great locations for marketing staff.
Brilliant. Flat Planet, is it flatplanet.com.au? Is that the one?
That's it. Yep. They're based out of Australia.
All right. We're gonna include that, and then we'll include that in the show notes, that link. I'm gonna call them frankly, because what a big unlock it is. Like
It's a huge unlock.
We could put $200,000 down for a US based, BI analyst, or you can get that for a quarter of it, and probably just as good if you're willing to put in a little bit of elbow grease.
The good thing about Flat Planet too is, all these people want to feel valued, right? And you want them to feel valued. So they are a valued part of our team. Flat Planet organizes their office situations. So they're sitting together. They organize the Christmas parties. We collaborate on the policies around holidays, what holidays they have, annual raises, et cetera. So they're still managing those folks, but they're still creating a team-like environment for us.
That's really cool. I love that. Now, do you have in each of these locations, is there a manager? Like, is there somebody who's in charge of the whole operation, or does Flat Planet do that as well?
Now, Flat Planet manages the employees. They're technically a Flat Planet employee. So they're a Flat Planet employee assigned to us. They manage them. But and then each employee there, maps into their, boss in the US or their boss, whoever their boss is. So it could be a boss in India for some of them.
I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, but everybody, say in Manila, they're all working out of the same physical space.
They work out of the same physical space a couple days a week, and then they work from home a couple days a week, because it's the same. We try to follow the same policy as US. Plus, the traffic in Manila is terrible, so that allows them more productive time their early morning to overlap with the US if they have a couple days a week from home.
Yeah. Man, I love this concept. We could do a whole hour just on this, but one last sort of micro question for you. So it sounds like you take a lot of time and put a lot of thought into making things like clear and cut and dry. Do questions ever?
Well, listen, I think we take a lot of time with it, but it does take time to figure it out. Don't expect it to work fantastically day one.
Yeah.
Right. Like we discovered, over the last year that the big thing that we needed better was our briefs needed to get better. Our campaign teams needed to do way better on direction and briefs. So we've iterated on that process several times and locked that down and trained and retrained the teams. We're actually going through another retraining right now to get our SOPs super clear. It does take time. You're not gonna get it exactly right the first go round.
That'd be a good custom GPT, like a brief checker. It's like grade my brief.
I love that idea.
Yeah, there's a nice gem for you.
That's a good one.
So what happens in the event that, somebody on the Manila or the India team has a question like midstream that they don't know the answer to? Is there a backup plan, or does that ever?
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's great to have, teams, several people in the same location that can help each other, like peer review things. I will say Slack does get a little busy in the evening sometimes, and our managers know sometimes they have to be, checking in. So none of us are, strictly 9 to 5 these days. And I think that goes with, we have a flexible PTO policy. We have flexible scheduling because we know nothing is 9 to 5. Like I was on the phone recently with one of my managers and he said, yeah, I can do that. Hey, let me send that to you right before, 8 p.m. because I got to get on at 8 p.m. and have a one with somebody in India. And like, that's the reality of managing a global workforce. So you just have to have teams that are willing to sign up for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not insignificant, but it sounds like it's balanced with flexibility and other,
It has to be balanced with flexibility.
Yeah.
Go to your kids' school function, take the time off to go pick up your kids from camp and hang out, like those things are important too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely find myself working pretty much at very odd hours as well. However, I do turn my Slack notifications off. Like
that's probably smart.
Yeah.
I schedule all mine for the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
I schedule, like if I'm going to send a Slack after, 5, I schedule it.
Do you want to know what I just learned about? So on the desktop Slack, you've got the send later. Yeah. You can do that on mobile too by pushing and holding the send button.
I'm the queen of that.
Yeah, I just learned that like 2 weeks ago. It was revolutionizing.
Yes.
Cool. Well, that is incredibly valuable. I think it's timely. I think it's a major unlock. I don't think that anybody is doing it the way that you are, at least not many. So for everybody listening to this, like, take some action there. I think that it is a lot of work to untangle your fruit salad and do that, org chart work and that role definition and that process definition. That is certainly a big amount of work. It sounds like it can be done sort of incrementally, like you don't necessarily have to boil the whole ocean. And it seems like you could call Flat Planet now and sort of get those conversations going, and they might be able to help with some of that, I imagine.
Yep.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I got to go. I'm going to go do that right now. No, I'm just kidding. Cool. Well, let's talk about Daxko a little bit. I'm really curious to learn more. For folks that are not familiar, can you give us just a brief overview?
I doubt you're familiar, but you might have interacted with Daxko. So if you work out at a Y or a Blink or an Equinox, you've interacted with Daxko software.
Oh,
So Daxko does the software that helps fitness businesses manage their business. So software, payments, marketing automation, back end accounting, everything. So if you've checked into a club, put your thumb down or swiped your membership card, et cetera, you've probably interacted with our software.
oh, cool.
Yep.
That's interesting. How did you get into that, or how did you find each other?
I got recruited. And when I first got recruited, I was like, oh, I'm a software marketer and I'm with software, but I'm like, oh, it's fitness. What do I know about fitness? And I thought, well, maybe it'll help me get on a fitness journey. And it has. I've like being surrounded by people who work in fitness all day. You think a lot more about fitness. And
Yeah.
so for me, I've used it as a motivation to be balancing work a lot more, and just watching my health and my fitness journey and interacting with others in the industry.
Oh, that's
It's
interesting.
it's a fascinating industry, and I think it's a combination of, I feel really good about partnering with nonprofits like YMCA's and Boys and Girls Clubs, because they're actually having transformational impact on the lives of people in their community. They run childcare programs, they run camps, they run your kids' swim lessons. My kids went to YMCA summer camps for years, and I never thought about myself as being part of a Y community until I started really getting involved with that and understanding it. And it's such a wonderful thing to participate and support the YMCA movement in the United States. And we are the biggest supplier of software into that movement, and I love that aspect of my job.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. You guys are fairly big. It looks like 872 employees on LinkedIn. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess that might be big or small, but seems pretty big to me, bigger than I thought.
yeah, yep. It's a good sized company. We have software that meets just about any fitness business need. So if you're running a martial arts studio, that's probably Daxko through our brand Zen Planner. If you're have a club, a tennis club, it's probably Daxko. If you're at a Y, it's probably Daxko. So
Yeah.
we're way bigger than you think. It's kind of like the the little sneaky software that's running behind the scenes you never would have thought about.
So that's really interesting though. What's really driving your growth engine? Like what's really working for you guys from a customer acquisition standpoint?
Um, I think like most SaaS companies, the last couple of years have been, tough, and because everything that was tried and true before COVID doesn't really work the same way. So I don't have a good, clean playbook to say this is working or not working. We have our, we're not overly invested in any one channel. We're experimenting with all of them all the time, constantly optimizing. So we're still in paid search. We're still in SEO. We're, on Reddit. We're on G2. We're everywhere you would expect a software company to be. They all have importance and relevance, and they all are incrementally contributing. Our number one driver is probably still SEO,
Mhm.
even though I'm super concerned about what's happening with the amount of search going over to the chatbots and the amount of search that Google's retaining to themselves through the SGE. Like, I'm still concerned about that. It's still, one of our top drivers, and we invest a lot in it. And we're actually, we're underinvested for years, and we've been really shifting our focus to great content, original research. Like I talked about, we have, I don't know, like 40% of the people that work out in the US work out in one of our clubs, and we have all that data. So we can see trends on, what's shifting in terms of, types of workouts, what's shifting in types of programs. Like, is swimming more popular right now for kids than, something else like, T-ball or other soccer leagues? We have all that data, and we can produce some really interesting data. And like, that's a big focus of ours, to really get our SEO really focused around our own storytelling and data.
That's really awesome. In terms of SGE, we've done a tremendous amount of research and testing in that space. We've got a whole blueprint for it in terms of like how to, maximize your chances of being sort of cited or?
Well, that's needed. I mean, I can think of 100 other CMOs would like to have that conversation.
Oh yeah, 100%. I can share that with you, and we can post it here as well. But one of the big secrets is with schema markup. So similar to how you would go about landing the slots in the people also ask sections, but schema markup is, really important in its elevation.
Okay, now I want to geek out on that this weekend over coffee. So
Yeah,
let's
I'll definitely share that with you.
okay.
But it's fascinating. We were, this had been on the radar for a while. We did a lot of research on it. It started rolling out, but then it started coming back. So like Google's not liking something about it. I'm pretty sure that
Right.
they have
The loss
ad
of ad dollars.
slots.
What could it be?
Right. Yeah. Google has like exactly one revenue stream. But there was that, and there was also like the unusual and unsafe responses that came back a couple times. Like people forget, but it was giving some bizarre advice, like that you should eat rocks, for instance, if you have a stomach ache or something, like some weird stuff like that. I think it's still coming, right? And now OpenAI is getting into the search game.
I think they all will. I think they all will. Yes.
Yeah.
So I know that landscape is going to change so dramatically. It gives me anxiety because I don't feel like, I think if you're, as a CMO, you got to keep one, ear to the ground on stuff like that. But, like, I don't know many CMOs who are not busy running really hard at today's pipeline
Yeah.
enough to spend time thinking about those changes and what they need to do to change. I mean,
Right.
I luckily participate in a CMO group. We meet every Friday, and so I get a lot of, that kind of conversation through that group to pull me forward. Otherwise, I'm sprinting towards just in time writing my keynote speech for next week's conference, right? Like it's very hard to stay ahead when you're a CEO, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I admire that honesty, like both that honesty and your thought regarding like, hey, look, we don't necessarily have a tried and true playbook. We're still kind of, feeling around, but SEO is working. I admire that. I think a lot of people are in that same boat, but they don't necessarily want to say it. So I admire you saying what everybody wants to say, but I was too timid to or too proud to.
I think based on the number of CMOs who post daily in our CMO Slack group for, can somebody, tell me this, or has anybody got advice on that? I think the CMOs are, as a group, all feeling their way through a lot right now.
Yeah. What CMO group is it or what Slack channel group?
Yeah, it's called the CMO Coffee Talk Slack group. It started, actually started before COVID as like the CMO Breakfast Club. And it was a group of CMOs that would get together in a couple different cities, and we had a Slack group. And then during COVID, we switched to every Friday morning, 8 a.m. coffee meeting where we would talk about what's happening. What are you doing? Are your BDRs turned back on or not? How are you, dealing with employees? Like, how are you communicating to customers? And we really bonded over that. And there was a small group of us, maybe a couple hundred, and that group has now exploded to 4,000 CMOs.
What?
And then during COVID, it's insane. It's an insane group.
Wow.
You can join.
Who runs it? Mm-hmm. I've heard of them. Interesting. That's really cool. That's super cool. Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Did I tell you we got acquired recently? My company, I'm co-founder at Web Mechanics. We were acquired probably like right around the time we first met a few months ago. We were acquired by another group called Level. Great group. Decent amount of overlap. Like we have the same DNA, similar services, but they're really, really deep in terms of like data analytics and upper funnel, like awareness media. Like they run a lot of CTV, a lot of display, those types of things. Where our DNA is more search, like we're more search, like SEO, SEM people. So we're complementary, but anyway, the reason I'm telling you that is because I am now technically chief revenue officer, or at least transitioning into that, at the
Group. You
I
just have
am.
to be head of marketing, even if you're head of marketing of a services team.
Yeah, I
The only rule is no pitching in the group.
Yeah.
Come in, participate, grow your brand by, participating, but no pitching.
I don't know how to pitch anyway. I suck at pitching. It's laughable, my pitch. I'm just like, oh, did you hear about AISG? Oh, I'm just like, I'll get all geeky. That's my pitch. Cool. Yeah, I might check that out. But it is, I've not fully transitioned into that role yet, but it is big and it is daunting. And I understand what you mean by like, hey, I'm sprinting, to finish this keynote. Like, I don't really have time right now to think about 2025,
It creates anxiety. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Super. All right, cool. Well, this has been really, really awesome. I absolutely loved it. We have a few minutes left, but I definitely want to be sensitive to your time. And I think that there is enough value.
More than enough content for you to edit something.
Oh my goodness. This is amazing. Like,
okay, good.
I think like just the first part, that the gem of what'd you call it? Following the sun. That's enough to keep folks busy, I think, for quite a while. It inspired me for sure.
Well, you've inspired me to want to learn about how to game the SGE for sure. It's one of the things on my mind. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
For sure. 100%. Yeah, I can send that to you right as soon as we get off here. Okay. But yeah, let's see. Anything else? Any parting thoughts? Anything else you want to share before we wrap it?
Well, let's see. Parting thoughts. I don't know.
Anything new that you're really excited about that you've got coming online soon? Anything AI cool that you're doing?
Anything AI? Well, I'm super excited about some of the work that Qualified's doing to bring some AI into our web chat.
That's good.
Virtual AI SDR, so we can have our chat on more hours of the day. So
who's doing that? Qualified?
Yeah, that's who we use for our web chat. And so I'm excited to see how if that makes a difference to the conversion on our site. So that's one area I've got my eye on for AI use. The rest of my AI use is a lot of workflow automation, a lot of content automation.
Yeah. I'm curious, how do you guys access AI? Like, are you just going right directly to ChatGPT, or do you use?
Yeah, I think that's going to be changing. Probably like many, our board is starting to ask the question of how secure is our data? How much of our company data is in AI? And so we're thinking a lot about that right now. What gets locked down in a dedicated tool that is not open to, OpenAI or to Claude, or versus what we want to use out there to train those AIs. Like that is some thinking that I'm doing right now. We're having a conversation about, do we need an enterprise edition of ChatGPT? Are there other tools? We're re-looking at Writer again now that they have some better offers, to see if that might be a solution for us on the content side. So
yeah,
I think the AI landscape is changing so fast, but now it's time to get really, a little less experimental and a little bit more, programmatic with it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've thought a lot about that too. And we have an in-house solution, which is self-hosted, and it gives us access to a bunch of different models. So you can just toggle between Llama or Claude or what have you. But I think that's something that a lot of folks are wrestling with. I heard that Meta's Llama recently came out with an enterprise level solution that is much cheaper to self-host in a secure way. I think that there are some drawbacks, like it's not trained on maybe as many parameters. Like it's more of a small language model more than a large language model. But the idea is that you go in and you train it with all of the data that you want it to know. Everything about Daxko, your competitive environment, your messaging, your language, your ICP, et cetera.
I mean, the thing about the thing about using, say, OpenAI or ChatGPT is, it isn't just about like knowing our stuff. We've created some custom GPTs for each of our brands, and we feed it for like we have an SEO GPT for each of our products. Like that's trained on our high intent and transactional keywords. It's like this. It's like the day-to-day stuff. Like this morning, I was having a conversation with somebody about what's the right salary band for a job description, and rather than whatever, I went and asked ChatGPT. It gave me an answer, and I used that, and I trust it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is like a very different workflow than we had a year ago around that kind of stuff. And so like that, I think you got to decide where a public model works and where a private model works.
Yeah, totally. There's this guy at Level who was going to be out of the office for a week or two, and he created a GPT for him. So like you could ask the GPT any question that he knew. He like uploaded all of his like project work and stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Cool. Well, I love it too. There's, I'll tell you what has been one of my latest obsessions, and then we'll wrap. But agents, so like your chat bot, that would be considered a form of an agent. It's like, it's a complex workflow, basically taking, a cold chat and taking it all the way to booking a meeting. Like that's a fairly complex workflow. So that's what agents are all about. And Mark Zuckerberg is talking about it. All these people are.
But this is why I'm excited about the qualified AI, because it's called Piper. It's like, it's the idea of, my SDRs, BDRs only work certain hours of the day. If I can extend that out 1 or 2 hours in either direction through, an agent and book a few more meetings a day, that's revenue in our pocket. I'll take that all day, any day.
Yeah. So the thinking is, or what Zuck says, is basically the way that everybody has a website today. Like everybody will have an agent, and
there's zero doubt.
Yeah. And there's this company that I'm friends with the founder. They're tiny, but they have this really sick tech. It's called Bland.ai. Bland as in like, hey, put some salt on this. That's a little bland.
Yeah.
But it's a phone agent, where like they call it a pathway engineer can go and basically program that similar thing, like the appointment setting activity, or various customer service activities, or maybe even like booking sales of like a simpler product.
I love it. We're using AI called Forethought as the front end of our support chat, and our call deflection, our email and call deflection rates have gone through the roof since using that, which it doesn't mean that we're not doing call support. It means that those calls are the harder cases, not the, hey, can you reset my password stuff that we used to be getting.
Yeah.
And so those support people are way more productive on the key important issues for our customers versus, all the stuff that could have been handled as we are now through a chat. It's transformational already. I can only imagine what it's going to be like as we start to bring technology like this on board.
Yeah. It's exciting.
I'm excited. I'm going to go check out Bland now.
Yeah. Bland.ai. There's this little demo. You can put your, phone number in and it'll call you. And I like to, I threw a curveball at it. It's like, hey, who's this? And I'm like, oh, hey, this is Chris. And they're like, oh, like Bland AI this. And I'm like, I thought this was Taco Bell. And they were like, haha, nope, not Taco Bell. And then they kind of made a joke a little bit. And then they circled back around to trying to learn. They're like, what do you do for your job, Chris? Like trying to basically sell me,
I loved it.
It was really fun.
I loved it. All right. I'm going to check it out.
Cool.
All right, Chris, this has been a blast.
Yeah, I agree. One last thing is for folks that would like to learn more about you or Daxko, where would you refer them? Would you direct?
Come visit us at Daxko.com. You can also visit us at clubautomation.com or zenplanner.com, depending on what your interest is.
Love that. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. This has been inspirational, folks listening. If you feel inspired or learned anything or laughed a little bit today, go ahead and drop us a 5-star review wherever you get your pods, or share this with a friend. We always appreciate that. For everybody else, that was another awesome episode of Revenue-Driven CMO, and we'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenue-drivencmo.com. That's revenue-drivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours, even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenue-drivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenue-drivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.